Welcome to the REWIRE Expert Interview Series, in which we talk about security within IoT environments in the context of Zero Trust systems of systems. I am Christiana Kiperunda from 8Bells, one of the partners of the REWIRE Consortium, and I am delighted to introduce our first expert, Thanassis Giannetsos from UBITECH, acting as the scientific coordinator of the project. Thanassis, a warm welcome to you, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and it's a pleasure to be here for this first interview to talk about the exciting news and the exciting work we are doing in the context of REWIRE.
So to begin, let's introduce REWIRE to our audience. What is the vision and the mission of the REWIRE project?
REWIRE deals with the security and operational assurance in the context of system of systems. Now, what do we mean by system of systems? So there has been an inherent shift during the last couple of years, where basically we are trying to put more focus, more effort, so to shift the tasks from the back end closer to the edge. So basically we are having more resources with what is happening in the context of networking, also with the emergence of 6G. And we actually now have the capabilities and the resources to be able to do more tasks, more activities closer to the edge and closer to the devices that are operating in the edge. Now, on one hand, this is actually very good because this gives the opportunity to have the tasks and the operations taking place closer to the users. But on the other hand, this opens up a whole new set of attack vectors for being able to be exploited in the context for these devices. So it is of paramount importance to be able to come up with new security services on trying to protect these devices. And always keep in mind that, yes, we now have the resources to be able to do some type of tasks in the embedded systems, but they still remain resource-constrained embedded devices. So we need to be able to come up with new security controls that are lightweight enough to also be able to protect the devices, but without invading, let's say, the operational profile, without having a huge impact on the operation of the devices on their normal tasks. And this is where we come as REWIRE. So we are actually want to create a new set of runtime security controls that are able to protect even new attack vectors that people are exploiting against type of systems, again, in a lightweight manner so that we don't affect the operation of the devices. Another important thing, and as you mentioned in the title of the proposal, the title of the project itself, is we're talking about Zero Trust. So this is one of the core innovations that we are also considering in REWIRE, and this is essentially what the community now wants. We don't want to make any inherent assumption about the trust level, about the trustworthiness of the devices themselves. So we are talking about the entire life cycle of the devices, from the moment we are bootstrapping the devices to the moment that they are actually part of a system of systems and they are operating towards a common goal. So basically, we are providing a set of schemes that are able to provide an entire secure lifecycle management of all the devices. This will allow us from the design phase to be able to actually come up with those device configurations that we can formally verify that they are basically part of the trust model, that they are operating in the expected context, in the expected behavior, all the way to define the appropriate security policies with the appropriate level of granularity per device, basically, so that depending on what each device is doing, on the nature of the safety critical services that we are deploying in the systems, to be able to come up with those appropriate security controls to operate in the system. And as we will be talking later on, this is building on top of the concept which is called trusted computing. So essentially, we are verifying and monitoring and attesting that each device is operating as expected. And whenever there is a deviation in the behavior, which interprets to a deviation in the trust level of the device, we are able to very quickly and efficiently taking the appropriate measures to actually either isolate the device or deploy new security controls to protect the system against the possible indication of risk. So to summarize and in one go, REWIRE accommodates the whole vision of never trust, always verify, which is the foundational pillar of the concept of zero trust, and is able to bootstrap the trust of the devices all the way to the runtime operation where they are working in different type of services to offer it to the user.
Thanassis, you mentioned that REWIRE is considering sustainable security in the context of zero trust systems of systems, security with longevity. But what does this mean? What types of threats or ways of attacks against such devices are there? How can existing mechanisms help, and what additional features REWIRE is offering?
The important thing to always consider here, as I mentioned before, in the context of, as we mentioned, zero trust and sustainable security, is the need now to be able to have systems that they can operate in an automated and autonomous manner for a long period of time. And this actually translates to be able to have the capabilities to also cope with zero-day vulnerabilities. Okay, so we don't always know what are possible exploitation avenues that an attacker can target when we deploy the system. And this is the meaning of actually having sustainable security. So, of course, there has been a lot of research and a lot of effort, both in the academia and also the industry, in identifying different types of vulnerabilities. But up until now, there have been made a lot of assumptions when we're talking about how to attack a system, how to penetrate a system. And essentially, this means that we have been focusing a lot on network-related attacks, and we are not opening so much the device itself or a set of devices that are working together to be able to provide the service. And this is now, when we're talking about system of systems, this is actually the new set of attack vectors. So we can actually penetrate the weakest link of a system, and through this device, then we can try to exploit vulnerabilities to get access to other devices that potentially perform more safety critical services. So we need to basically see the system as a composition of smaller devices, but we need to make sure that all of the devices are on the same trust level. This is what a lot of things have been going on, as I mentioned, in the context of trusted computing. So trusted computing means that we are trying to verify the behavior of each device. There have been numerous protocols, again proposed by the standards, the trust computing group, but also the industry and the academia, in providing remote attestation capabilities, so to remotely verify a system. Now, the difference in this case is that a lot of these skills are not lightweight enough to be able to run in embedded systems, or if they are able to run, we are always have issues of what happens with the other resources remaining available for the operation. And the other important thing is the context of zero trust. So when we're talking about this type of attestation skills, we are making assumptions that we are trusting the actor who acts as a verifier, so who verifies and attests the behavior of the devices. And third, and most important, is that these type of attestations, when they were designed, they are not able to cope with the new set of attack vectors, especially in the context of cross-layer vulnerabilities. What this means is that people are now targeting both the hardware and the software of a device. So they are able to basically try to get access from the hardware to be able to then leak keys or leak sensitive information that are within a system. So this type of cross-layer vulnerabilities, we have seen the impact. You can consider attacks like Spectrum, which is actually a really important example of such cross-layer vulnerabilities. And this is now what necessitates for the provision of new, more advanced attestation capabilities. Again, this is where REWIRE comes into play. So we are actually designing a new set of attestation skills that can actually convert each device to a security hardened token that we are able to put trust in it when they are providing a service. The other important thing when we're talking about this attestation, as I mentioned, is to be able to cope with zero-day vulnerabilities and in a way that is lightweight enough to run in the devices. And this is again where we are coming, and I think we are one of the first to be able to converge formal verification, so during design phase, so when we're designing the hardware and when we're designing essentially the configuration of a device, we can formally verify the capabilities before we deploy, and we can identify those specific properties, those specific system characteristics that we cannot verify during design time. And this is actually where we need to focus during runtime, okay? So what we are trying to do in REWIRE is that we are trying to create, think of it, much more focused attestation schemes where we are attesting, we are verifying only those properties of a device that cannot be formally verified before we deploy the software or the entire operational stack of a device. This allows us to basically have much stronger security mechanism to operate in a more lightweight manner, because we are only focusing and pinpointing those specific runtime properties that, if compromised, they have the higher impact in the device, and we know that they can be compromised because we cannot formally verify them beforehand. And this is one of the core innovation of REWIRE. Okay, we're trying to bring these two worlds of formal verification plus runtime cybersecurity. We converge them, we bring them together to try to reap the benefits, let's say, of these two technologies and all of the things that they have been done in these two domains, but up until now, they were seen actually as separate domains and they were not putting them to work together.
Can you please elaborate on the key technologies that REWIRE is investigating? It seems that REWIRE is a rather multidisciplinary project involving technologies like trusted computing, formal verification of hardware configurations, crypto, but how all these technologies are coming together?
Yes, exactly. REWIRE is actually a very multidisciplinary project where we try and we have brought together expertise from different domains. The important thing, as I also mentioned, is that we are targeting the security lifecycle management of a device. Essentially, we're talking about from bootstrapping, trusting the device, all the way to the runtime operation. So this requires, from the moment we are actually designing the hardware and we are designing the configuration profile template that is going to be deployed, all the way to designing the necessary crypto primitives to secure the confidentiality, integrity, robustness of the communication between devices. So the domains that we have expertise within the consortium is one important thing, the formal verification of the hardware software capabilities. In this context, we also have expertise and we're considering a very detailed vulnerability analysis of the different type of software that is going to be deployed in the system. So we actually have a partner from Netherlands called Secura that they are going to investigate a new methodology, let's say, of how to be able to do deep vulnerability analysis of both the software and the firmware that can be deployed at the device at the byte level. Okay, so we can basically unpackage the entire software firmware, do a detailed vulnerability analysis, and then we can repackage it before we send it out and we deploy it into the device. The second important domain, as I mentioned in the context of runtime, it's also the convergence, okay, of trusted computing plus crypto. Trusted computing is all the fact of basically trying to verify, attest the behavior of the device, but in order for this to be able to be done, we need to have a root of trust in the device. A root of trust is essentially, it can be a separate hardware, like a TPM, a trust platform module. This is something that currently we have in most of our laptops and in most of our mobile devices, or it can be a hybrid software-based, hardware-based, like a trust execution environment. These actually provide the necessary crypto capabilities to protect the operation of attestation, verification schemes running in the design. And this takes us to the third domain of the crypto itself. We all know that when we're talking about runtime security, what we can trust is the crypto. Okay, so the better crypto mechanism we can have and the crypto algorithms, and if we protect the keys, then we can actually have the necessary level of guarantees that the device is behaving as expected. And the important factor here is to be able to actually protect the key that we are using in the crypto. So there is a whole new set of research against attacks which target the key, so key leakage. So in REWIRE, we're basically designing all of our schemes to be able to provide resilience against key leakage attacks, even in the context where the attacker potentially has physical access to the device. So this together, trusted computing with this crypto, provides us a very, very strong trusted computing base that REWIRE will provide, that once we deploy it to each of the devices, we can actually reach the vision of having a security hardened token as actually being the device. And in this context, we are also considering the new technology in the context of RISC-V. So RISC-V is the new version of operating system that provides capabilities like isolation, where essentially all of the devices are start adopting this type of architecture. And we are still at an infancy, at a very early stage, when we are doing investigation and research for the type of root of trust that we can actually use together with RISC-V. So in REWIRE, we are actually dealing with technologies like a trust execution environment using Keystone, which is the most prominent type of trust execution environment to be able to work together with RISC-V. On top of that, and these are the three main domains that enable this vision of sustainable security. But we are also considering, let's say, the aftermath. The aftermath means that we need to provide also the means to have verifiable evidence so that anyone can check at any point in time that indeed the operational profile of a device is at the correct state. So we are also using technologies considering the use of blockchain and considering the use of verifiable credential as conformity certificates. So we are creating from the device, from the root of trust of the device, certificates at any point in time, certifying that the device is at the correct state. If not, then we are securely revoking the certificates. This allows essentially for any stakeholder, any user, or any other device that wants to establish a relationship with another system to be able to check the history of trust. Like it's like a chain of trust of the behavior of this device through their certificates. So as you can see, basically, we are indeed using a lot of technologies together to be able to actually enable the vision of moving towards next generation system of systems, where we are having a lot of different types of heterogeneous devices with different capabilities to be able to work in tandem and at any point in time to actually verify their correct state.
Before getting to the use cases considered in REWIRE, I would like to ask you also, aside from the obvious technical advancements, how else does this project impact the EU in terms of the type of research that you are doing?
That's a very, very interesting question. Of course, besides the research novelties and the innovations we are bringing in the community, it is also important for us to actually have an exploitation, have an impact on the status of the EU when we're talking about this type of security controls. What is important to us here is to enable essentially the EU to not follow, let's say, the innovations that are brought forth by research institutes and companies that are outside the EU. So currently, a lot of things, for instance, when we're talking about trust computing, they are being led by companies and by universities in the US. And we are working with this type of researchers because we actually have numerous people from outside the EU in our advisory board. But with being able to provide this type of system within the EU, we will actually enable the EU to come into the forefront of actually allowing them to impact the specifications of how the new version, the new vision of the security controls they need to be able to put in practice. And this is currently really important because there is a lot of ongoing discussions about what is the new security controls we need, especially as we are also moving into the post-quantum era. So as we are getting closer to having quantum computing capabilities, which of course requires to have to consider also post-quantum crypto. This necessitates even further now to be able to have new types of security controls that are lightweight enough and are also modular to be able to work with the new technologies of quantum crypto when they are available. So all of these things we are also taking into consideration, and all of our designs, all of our protocols, they are modular enough to be able to accommodate also this transition and allow the EU and allow us to be able to participate and disseminate this information to the working group, to the standards that are now discussing all of these new specifications, to take them into consideration. So essentially, we allow the EU to shape the future of how cybersecurity needs to look like as we are moving again to the new era of quantum computing.
Thanassis, there is a saying that you are probably familiar with. Security that is not accepted by the expert community might not be so secure. Are there any expert bodies with which you are working together or are planning to present the outcomes of your research?
One of our goals is to basically allow the shaping of the specification that are currently being discussed. Considering this multidisciplinary nature of our project, we are aiming, and we have actually already established liaisons with a lot of standardization bodies. The main ones are, of course, the Trust Computing Group. So TCG is the main working group that essentially drives the definition, design, and implementation of all of the new attestation schemes and all of the protocols that enable the transformation of a device into a security hardened token. So REWIRE is actually a member, so a lot of REWIRE partners are a member of TCG, and all of our new schemes, we have actually presented them and we will present them together with the TCG, and hopefully we will be able to shape the new attestations that are being worked with the TCG. And we are actually happy to say that this is ongoing because, for instance, there is a whole new activity of how to be able to create secure message exchange protocol that takes place within a device between the root of trust and the host operating system. And this is something that also REWIRE has been working on. Another important thing is also when it comes to the crypto artifacts. So we also have REWIRE partners that are members of the ISO. So for instance, University of Surrey, which is very active, and Professor Lee Kun Chen, very active in the ISO. So all of our new designs when it comes to the crypto schemes, and especially also with the key resilient, with the key leakage resilience, are going to be presented in the ISO. The third most important standardization activities of the project have to do with the concept of SSI. So this stands for self-sovereign identity. So there is a lot of discussions nowadays to be able to give control of the data management and the identity management back to the users. This is the meaning of sovereignty. And this actually now goes to the use of concepts like verifiable credentials and verifiable presentations, where the user can select which attributes, either identity attributes or essentially data attributes coming from their devices, they want to disclose when they are communicating with other parts of the entire service graph chain. So we are actually also working together. We have established a liaison with working groups, including the Decentralized Identity Foundation, where they are working towards the provision of this type of schemes, especially in the context of selective disclosure. So to be able to disclose only specific attributes in a zero-knowledge manner, so a device can actually prove its trust state without disclosing what the state is. And again, the idea is to be able to shape the specifications and the design of these new schemes. Besides that, of course, the last thing is related to our activities regarding the use of blockchain. Okay, so we're actually using the blockchain for auditability purposes. So all of the outcomes of the runtime security controls and the evidence being used for evaluating the trust state of the device. So in order for anyone to be able to audit the state of a device, they can actually securely access this information on the blockchain. So we also have partners that they are member of the ISO TC307, where they're working about defining this new type of protocols. So as you can see, in all of the core technologies where REWIRE is active, we have already positioned ourselves in a very good way to be able to disseminate, first of all, our results, and hopefully to be able to then save the new specifications that these working groups are going to be to produce.
That's great. And when you look at a consortium like this, part of the strength comes from the diversity. In REWIRE, what type of expertise do you have? Is it research institutes or academics, or a mix?
Of course, it's a mix. So REWIRE is a research project, but at the end of the day, we are also going to be providing a proof of concept of the entire system. So we are very fortunate to have leading partners from both the industry and the academia when we are designing these type of schemes in all of these domains. So, for instance, in the context of the crypto, as I mentioned, we have University of Surrey, where we have Professor Likunsen. So Professor Likunsen is a pioneer, let's say, of also designing crypto activities in the context of trust computing. We also have University of Louvain. University of Louvain is one of the driving universities in the design and investigation of leakage in various crypto schemes. We are also having, in the context of the industry, we have NEC from Germany. So NEC is again one of the leading industrial partners in developing protocols based on the use of trust execution environments, and they are also doing a lot of activities by using these new technologies like Keystone in the context of RISC-V. We are also having technology providers like Collins, and Collins has a well-known record in the formal verification of the hardware. So you can see that we basically have a very nice mixture of both industrial and academic partners that enable us, that allow us to make sure that all of these different building blocks, they can actually work in tandem, but in a way that is formally verified. So the level of security that we are claiming to be offering, everything will be formally verified, everything will be proven that we can achieve our goals. So yes, to be honest, we are very, very fortunate that we have a very strong consortium comprising both very strong industrial partners, but also leading universities.
And our last question for today, which are the use cases, application domains that REWIRE envisions to have the greatest impact?
Yes, so in general, overall, and as you can understand from all of the discussion we had thus far, any domain which is basically built on top the use of various systems for offering a service will have a direct impact from the new type of security controls that we are offering. So what we have aimed for in our use cases is to be able to identify those domains that have a mixed level of safety critical services. So for instance, we have one application domain in the context of automotive. So in the context of collaborative services, as we are moving forward in the context of SICAM. This is a very safety critical service because you can understand now there is a lot of ongoing discussions also with all of the new activities from Tesla when we're talking about autonomous driving. In this context, it's very, very important to be able to make sure that we have the appropriate trust assessment and security enablers, that we make sure that we are protecting the vehicles, because essentially we are protecting the safety of the passengers and the drivers. So we essentially are considering one specific use case in the context of automotive, where we are showcasing how REWIRE can establish a root of trust inside the vehicle. So even in the case that a vehicle gets compromised, we can very efficiently migrate the service of this vehicle either to another vehicle or to another component within the vehicle, so that we have continuity of the operation of the vehicle even in the context of safety critical services like collision avoidance, like intersection monitor assist. So essentially, we are showcasing how REWIRE can allow both security and safety in the context of automotive. And this is one example where we're talking for a very safety critical application domain. We are also considering examples in the context of smart cities. So smart cities now, even if it's like smart manufacturing, so a smaller example of a smart city, or if we're talking about a bigger example of smart city, as we are considering where we are also having like multiple traffic lights, other roadside units and other infrastructure assets that they need to exchange information to allow for services that let's say, increase the quality of life of the users, of the citizens. Again, the important thing here, it might not be so safety critical, but it is very, very important to have guarantees on the integrity and correctness of the data. So this is what has been called nowadays as data veracity. So we are also demonstrating how REWIRE can accommodate this need of being able to have very strong assurances on the integrity of the data exchange in the context of a smart city. The interesting part here is that we are talking about a lot of heterogeneous devices that they need to be able to operate together and to exchange data at a very high rate. So essentially, it requires very, very lightweight and very efficient mechanism to be able to scale. And that's the goal of what we want to demonstrate in the context of this use case. Last but not least, we are also considering one example of an application in the context of smart satellites. So the important thing here is that satellites is an example that when it goes to low orbit, it needs to be able to operate on its own in an autonomous manner for a long period of time. Nonetheless, in this context, what is a usual function is to be able to update the software. Okay? The software meaning the mission of the satellite. And the way now this thing works, it allows for possible exploitation. So the focus up until now in this context is to identify the means of how to be able to deploy a new software, but they haven't considered all of the type of security implications. So we are actually doing an investigation of the type of vulnerabilities that someone can exploit and how REWIRE can allow not only the efficient software update, but also the update in a secure and verifiable manner. This is rather important to also enable the vision of a new service. So there is the concept of satellite as a service. So essentially, you are sending satellites in the low orbit, and then you are allowing different users to upload their software, their mission, to be able to do experiments or to be able to do some type of monitoring of different artifacts. So in this case, you actually need very, very strong security mechanisms to be able to accommodate this type of a service. So all of these things, in the context of smart satellites, we actually envision to be able to test them together with the existing state-of-the-art protocols of how to actually enable this use. And in all of these three use cases, we actually have very strong industrial partners. So for the smart satellites, we have a partner which is called LSF, where they are actually having real satellites already deployed in the low orbit. In the context of the smart cities, we have a partner from Spain called Odins, and they are actually operating real infrastructure already deployed. Okay, so they actually own roadside units where we will be doing tests. Finally, in the context of the automotive, we have a company which is called Kenatom, and Kenatom is already providing software for the electronic control units that are part of an actual vehicle. So as you can see, yes, in REWIRE, we are basically a research project, but our research artifacts, we are envisioning to test them and do actual experiments in real world scenarios or in scenarios simulated, but that are emulating the parameters of real world scenarios, which will allow us to do a very, very detailed analysis of the benefits that REWIRE can bring in such safety critical services.
Thank you very much for joining me today, Thanassis, and for sharing with us all this insightful information about REWIRE. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And I'm really excited to share this vision. And for sure, we are going to actually have again a discussion once we are starting creating and we have the new artifacts in REWIRE. Hopefully that we reach the goal that we have as a project.
Great, that's a promise for us.